Good evening. I am Linda Lyman, and I welcome you to this evening's Green Thinking event. A special welcome to the viewers joining us at home. We're really glad that you're here too. I'd like to call on our Mayor of the town of Kingsville, Nelson Santos.
Well, thank you. On behalf of the town of Kingsville, I just want to welcome you to our community and say thank you for taking the time to learn, to listen, to appreciate, I think, the natural things that we have around us and the natural things that can provide cures for our families and for our communities. We are a small town. Here in Kingsville, we're not unlike many others where we struggle to find solutions to challenges that we may face, whether it's the personal health, trying to survive day to day, trying to raise your family and community. Things happen. Sometimes we have to look for solutions, and the best way is to find the natural way. And I think the information that we're going to hear today and share today with you and with those watching at home, it's very important that we keep an open mind and understand that it's okay to talk about cannabis. It's okay to talk about the drugs, friend or foe. The choice is ours. More importantly, the choice is we want a better, healthy lifestyle. And this is something I think that we need to listen to and try to find a way for resolutions. On behalf of the town of Kingsville, I do want to recognize there are other leaders in the community amongst you tonight as well. We have His Worship from Pelee Island is in attendance as well to listen. Welcome, Mr. Moss. Want to welcome some fellow members of council. Have Councillor Mr. Gaffin in attendance as well. Welcome. So we're all here. We're like you. We want to listen. We want to hear more about what cannabis has to offer. What does it provide for our communities? And for the guest speakers that are here today, thank you for sharing your story. We know it has not been easy. We know you have been challenged every step of the way, but we're here to listen and we're going to learn from you. So thank you for the time that you have with us today, and we look forward to hearing the rest of the speeches and the presentations. Thank you for the invitation for myself to be here, and for the organizers, for Tom and Linda. Great work. Everyone is coming to listen. It's an important message, and it's something that we all need to listen to. So again, thank you for the invitation here, and I look forward to speaking with many of you afterwards as well. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Nelson. As the MC, I've been asked to read this to you this evening. None of the speakers present here tonight at this event are doctors, and they are not allowed to dispense any medical advice, and that is neither the purpose of their comments, and nor it is of the assembly to dispense medical advice, but rather to simply relate their personal experiences, which may be considered or dismissed by another or others. It is not the purpose of this assembly to promote cannabis for recreational use, but rather the speakers will deliver personal testimonies of their various medical journeys and the role cannabis has played in their path to health and wellness. There is no smoking on the property. Moving ahead. I was told to say that. Part of being the MC. Have to do what I'm told. I don't like that. Anyways, Dr. Thomas Bernard was going to be here this evening. However, life being life and schedules changing as they do, he joins us now via the magic of technology. Please, Dr. Thomas Bernard, he is a man ahead of his time. He has done amazing work. Please, Dr. Thomas Bernard. Here we are with Dr. Thomas Bernard. We are most appreciative of his time, his energy, and his concern. I would like to start off this time together with you telling a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a physician trained at Cornell University, the University of Rochester Medical School in the States. I did postgraduate training as a family doc, and I did a year of anesthesia and emergency medicine training because I was really interested in working in remote places, and I wanted to run an air ambulance. The first thing I did actually when I went into practice back in 1980 was I used to work in the northwest of Ontario, running an air ambulance and flying around an area the size of France to a lot of different First Nations reserves. And so I had a lot of interesting experience with parts of the world and with people who, as a young doc growing up in New York State, I really didn't have a lot of exposure to. So, in a way, that early experience in my medical practice had a lot to do with shaping my worldview, or at least changing it. And one of the things that was interesting about that worldview is that First Nations people have a very different perspective on many things about their relationship to the natural world. And certainly their comfort with phytomedicines, plant-derived medicines, natural medicines, was actually really interesting. And many of their native elders, many of the First Nations elders, and many of their healers in their communities were really interested and very well versed in using things that were available in nature to help. And that was one of the things that interested me in cannabis, as one of a number of different possible plant groups that could offer us safe and effective treatment modalities for people. Because when you work as a physician, for better or worse, we have a number of very powerful tools at our disposal. And one of the problems we've seen, for example, with medical marijuana and the cannabinoid family of potential medications and natural substances that are beneficial possibly to health, is that because they've been regulated as illegal substances, because in North America, for the most part, the cannabinoid substances have been seen as narcotics, they've been so regulated that we've had a hard time getting a hold of them to even do any research, whether that was informal research or whether that would be research in a more formalized setting. And that's really, as compared to other parts of the world, like the Netherlands or Austria or Israel, where a lot of legality has been associated with the use of cannabinoid-derived materials, they are way ahead of us in terms of research. The other bias we have in North America is that we tend to believe mostly what research we do in our own backyard. And unfortunately, like I say, we've been real limited in what we've been able to do. So over the years as a doc, I've been in practice for 34 years. I practiced anesthesia for a large part of the early part of my training, partly because I was in a remote place and there was nobody else doing anesthesia, but even when I moved to bigger centers. And in anesthesia, of course, you're always looking for ways to relieve pain. I traveled to China. I studied acupuncture in China back in the mid-'80s. And it was interesting, in China, you would see a pharmacy in the hospital. And on one side, there'd be rows of pill bottles. And right next to that, there'd be piles of plants, and things that were used as part of their, traditional Chinese pharmacopoeia. So in the West, I think we've been a little bit, in a way, behind the times, or at least our experience has been directed in other ways, partly by the legal system and partly by profit, motivation here. So it's very interesting to me to see the anecdotal stories of people coming to me as patients. Ideally, you have a relationship with your doctor where you can pretty much tell them anything. You should, right? It's a confidential relationship. There should be a relationship of trust. So I have a lot of people who come to me and they'll say, I was just talking this morning to a fellow who was a boxer, and I was saying to you earlier, he had 90 fights, and anecdotally, what he did in the belief that he was protecting his brain after being injured during a fight, he would smoke marijuana. And because when you look at the animal studies we have, there's a good traction with cannabinoids in reducing inflammation. So his belief was he was protecting his brain. And when he looks at his colleagues, also boxers, in his same age group, he is much more functional than they are in terms of memory loss and various things. Look at poor Muhammad Ali and his Parkinson's. So do we know that as a fact, if you took a cannabinoid product of some kind after getting hit in a hockey game, or after being injured in boxing, that it would save your brain from damage? Well, we don't, because we haven't been able to study it. And why shouldn't we study it? I mean, that's the point. I would love to have a tool like that I could say to a kid who's going out to a hockey game, hey, listen, you take this pill after the hockey game. If you get hit in the head, hopefully it's going to reduce your risk, of having damage, over your lifetime. And in professional sports, this is such a huge development. We make all kinds of fancy helmets for athletes, but now we're looking at really people ending their careers early for fear that they've had actually some, damage, and that they don't want to compound that damage. People are retiring in their 30s. Excuse me. So I think that we need the opportunity to look at some of the stories we hear from our patients, where people say, oh, well, I use a little marijuana because that's the only thing that helps me sleep. And, we have drugs to help people sleep, but as everybody knows, most of the medications we have, some are great and they're very good tools, but they also all have a sort of a second line of side effects. Sometimes sleeping pills, as a good example, produce dependency. Sometimes they're actually addictive. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you've got a hangover and you can't think clearly. And it would behoove us to find better tools, the best tools out there. And maybe, from the stories people tell me, one of those tools might be a cannabinoid. So it's exciting. And this isn't new news. The actual word for anesthesia in China, the character for anesthesia, actually means cannabis intoxication. It's like 3,000 years old. And it may have been that was not cannabis sativa, the common strain we use now. It may have been cannabis indica, which is maybe a stronger anesthetic. Nonetheless, the idea is this has been around for a while, So why wouldn't we be able to, in a safe, and I was using the term dispassionate, we have to not be emotional in discussing it. We got to find good evidence for people. And sure, if we're going to make marijuana legal, we have to look at, well, what are the implications for people driving under the influence of cannabinoids? Well, we don't really know. We do know anecdotally, again, based on what everybody reports, that people don't usually get into a rage with cannabinoid products as opposed to, say, alcohol, that they don't tend to drive too fast with cannabinoids. In fact, they tend to drive slower. But we don't have good studies and we don't have good regulations. We have to address all that. Right now in Canada, there's a lot of hope that the cannabinoids will become in some way more widely available, more widely legalized, perhaps with the new Trudeau government federally. Under the Harper administration federally in Canada, physicians have been put squarely in the middle of the ability of a person to get medical access to cannabinoid medicines. And maybe that's appropriate, maybe it's not. In some ways, it might be better if it was possible for people to access cannabinoids, like in the beer store or something, and have that sort of regulation, that there was a certain age or whatever. Although, I have to admit, in children, as a good example, that whole experience with the young girl who had intractable seizures, and that whole strain of cannabis, which is called Charlotte's Web, which was really developed to help this child originally, and no doubt others, to avoid seizures. And this young woman went from, I think she was 6 years old, went from having 300 seizures a week to having 4 seizures a month by being able to use a strain of marijuana that was specifically formulated to provide a high level of one of the plant chemicals in cannabis, which is called cannabidiol. And that one is interesting because it seems to control seizures, it has anti-cancer effects as far as we can see, it tends to reduce inflammation, and it tends to reduce pain, but it does not give the psychoactive effect of the other well-known ingredient in cannabis, which is called 9-delta-tetrahydrocannabinol, which is called THC, basically. So if we have strains of marijuana available that are really good at reducing seizures and really good at reducing pain, wow, that would be great. And if we didn't have to worry about the anxiety that sometimes is associated with people using the psychoactive components cannabinoids, the THC components, good. And there'll be other examples where the THC component might be more desirable. But we need good direction, we need good research, we need good understanding of what's the best way of applying a cannabis-derived medication, as an example, to a given individual situation.
At this time, we'd like to call upon some of our speakers to share their personal stories. You can imagine the difficulty that this can be. This is very personal. So we ask you to respect that, and we ask you to keep this, these places in the confines of your heart and minds, okay? And I would like to call up our first speaker, Peggy Kennedy. Welcome, Peggy. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. Medical cannabis is changing my life, so much so that I want to scream it from the rooftops. You see, I was run over by a transport truck on Huron Church in 1999, and I sustained a ton of injuries, the worst being 3 breaks to my neck. I have a C2, C7 fusion. I'm lucky I can walk and talk, but the price for that is pain, lots of it. I also can't sit or stand, until now. Anyway, other injuries that I sustained, and we'll get to that, all my ribs were broken in multiple places. My ear was severed. I had an open head injury. My jaw was smashed in. I had multiple broken teeth. I have microfractures throughout most of the rest of them. My shoulder was broken. What's left is called hamburger. My right arm was broken. My back had swelling that came out a foot. My right hip was damaged, and I had all kinds of internal injuries and just a boatload of nerve damage. Over the years, I was bedridden and going through surgery after surgery and doctor after doctor. I started studying correspondence and then online, and studied nutrition and disease to try and do my part to help me. From that, I developed a smoothie that I drank. I developed what I call a full circle living model that I follow. I developed mottos that mostly I borrowed from, the Kennedy Space Center. Failure is not an option. And from my grandmother, put your right foot forward. And from one of my favorite singers, Elton John, I'm still standing. And those mottos helped me draw strength over the years, especially when around 2005, everything stagnated and all the healing stopped. And I was basically said, well, this is it. You can walk and talk and, get on with it. There's nothing more we can do about it. Things got worse when the pharmaceutical company discontinued the med that was keeping me alive and forced me to start using overdose levels of Advil to get through every day, sometimes up to 24 or 3,600 milligrams of Advil to get through a day. In 2005, I tried to re-enter my life and failed miserably. So back to the therapies, the home therapies, home physiotherapy, the TENS program, walking, the de-stressing, more doctor's appointments. In 2007, I took a painting course. Through that, I actually was able to dress myself without getting help and carry the plate from the dinner table back to the sink without dropping it, smashing it on the floor. So that was huge improvement. And in 2009, I graduated from the journalism program at St. Clair College. And that was huge for me because I had started studying journalism before I got run over by a truck. So I was really happy to be able to finish that program. But that came at great cost. At that point, the medicines were taking their tolls, and I was getting sicker. I had a tumor removed from my bladder and a great big 12-inch one out of my bowel. At this point, I started getting really vocal about wanting to try medical cannabis, and I wasn't getting anywhere. My doctor wouldn't even talk about it. Last November, I had a stroke, and while I was under the care of the neurosurgeon, I told him, I want to eat cannabis. And he said to me, wow, that's great. This is really going to help your brain to heal. But I'm sorry, I can't give you a script. I'm really busy being a neurosurgeon. And I get that. But what it did do was it gave me the courage to be even more vocal. So I started with every specialist I saw, till finally one of them said to me, you know what? you need to meet a guy named Jack Kungle. Look him up. Google him. Yeah, you got it. You got it. Well, not only did I meet Jack, I met him that day. And I called him that day and said, hey, I need to meet you. Now my doctor says I need to meet you. So we met that day, and Jack started educating me on the endocannabinoid system. That got me a prescription from my doctor, a conversation from him, and the script. Now, here I am 6 months later. I'm off all my medications. I'm standing, I'm walking. I can sit. I attended a social gathering and sat. I took some breaks, but I didn't go home throwing up. My bowels didn't let go. I wasn't chewing Advil. I was hurting a little bit. And I'm healing after 10 years of stagnation. The inflammation is going down, and rapidly. I'm down 5 dress sizes, 30 pounds. My back is feeling for the first time since 1999. And my neck that loses connection constantly isn't losing connection. It's rocked, it's irritated, but it's solid. I'm sitting. I'm here standing today alive, dreaming a new dreams, having a new life, seeing new horizons and new beginnings. It's out there, people. Cannabis, eating it works. Don't be afraid. Ask the right questions, educate yourself. Get out there and be vocal. Get it done. Stop suffering. Thank you.
Rocked it in. Thank you, Peggy, very much. Our next speaker is Victoria Catherine Grieve, aka Vic-tacular. Yeah.
Hi guys. I'm so glad that everyone is here, or by way of whatever way you're listening, you're interested in finding out more about cannabis and all of its potentials. I came here tonight to tell you exactly how cannabis, I believe, cannabis with a proper nutrition and a healthy attitude have got me here. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 21 years old. Now it was 10 years ago. And before coming here tonight, I thought about detailing what the journey to that diagnosis looked like, and all of the hellacious experiences I endured on my way there, but that isn't why we're here. For those of you who don't know much about multiple sclerosis, just know that it affects each and every one of its victims in very different and very unpredictable ways. I researched the proper definition, and I'm going to read it, hence the card. Multiple sclerosis is defined as a chronic, typically progressive disease involving damage to the sheaths of nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, whose symptoms may include numbness, impairment of speech and of muscle coordination, blurred vision, and extreme fatigue. Those are all true. I can tell you I've experienced most of them. And that's also my disclaimer. If I stumble upon my words, you can't hold it against me. It was very important to me from the beginning to treat myself naturally. Admittedly, for different reasons then than for the reasons that remain. It stemmed from when I was diagnosed, I remember the only form of treatments that they offered me were injections. And it was simple. At the age of 21, I just thought, there's no way that I'm sticking a needle in my leg. And the only difference between these treatments, as far as I could tell, were the frequency in which I would inject myself. So I started to educate myself. And soon it became very clear to me I had made the right choice. I have been blessed by the love and friendship of some absolutely beautiful people on my way here. One of whom, I don't want to get emotional, one of whom you're all going to meet in just moments. He has been my mentor, my grower, my cannabis consultant, and above all, my friend for the last 10 years, or maybe plus, my grower for the past 8. His name is Jack Kungle. And if it weren't for him or for cannabis, I cannot imagine where life may have taken me. Jack started to do his research first, and admittedly, much long before I did, but he quickly realized that the key to receiving all of the benefits that cannabis had to offer was through ingestion. He once explained to me that MS had gone through my body and had flicked off some light switches that were supposed to be on. And it was our main objective that by ingesting cannabis, we activate my endocannabinoid system, which I'm sure he'll tell you more about, and get those light switches to flick back on. I was very content to take Jack's word as gospel truth when I first started all of this and let him do all the research and just tell me about it. But he remained adamant that I educate myself about my own health and wellness, about cannabis. And for that, Jack, I will now ever be able to thank you enough. It's been 10 years since I received the diagnosis of MS. And in those 10 years, I've been ingesting cannabis for 8. And I've had 4 exacerbations in 10 years. And I don't know if all of you know much about MS or anyone with MS, but if you do, you'll know that 4 exacerbations in 10 years is a really good number. And I'll take a moment just to say an exacerbation is when MS rears its ugly head and does weird things. I've gone blind in my right eye. I've been unable to walk. I've had to take physiotherapy to learn how to catch a ball and hand-eye coordination, just to name a few. But 4 exacerbations in 10 years is amazing. I don't know how this disease is going to progress, and I don't know if this disease is going to progress, but I do know that by ingesting cannabis and proper nutrition and a healthy attitude have played a big part in helping me get to where I am today. And as Jack always encouraged me, I will encourage all of you, educate yourself, find out about cannabis. It's good medicine.
Thank you, Victacular. You are amazing. Our next speaker, his name is Stephen Lozon. I know him as Lumpy. He's a fantastic guy. Brother, come on up and share your story.
Good evening, everyone. In late 91, early 92, I had an accident with a snowmobile, and I was hit in the back of the legs with the track. Over the next 4 days, I became paralyzed from the neck down. Upon going to the emergency room, after the first time I was told that it was because I was hit, went home for a couple of days, came back because I had lost all feeling from my neck down. They did a spinal tap and they concluded that I had multiple sclerosis. I couldn't at the time understand because I couldn't even feed myself. I couldn't hold a spoon to bring it to my mouth. Couldn't walk. And as the disease took its toll, it took me probably 6 months to walk properly again. I could walk over a beach ball without touching the sides of it. My legs I had a severe gait. And a friend of mine said to me, you should try cannabis. It'll help the spasticity in your legs. Upon trying it, I realized that within 5 minutes, I could walk like a reasonable feel good about myself. And so I was amazed. And in the middle 90s, I was fortunate enough to have a doctor that realized that cannabis would help me. And he gave me the paperwork and the proper tools to have a license and to become one of the first people, 750 people in Canada that could medically take care of themselves, both to grow it for himself and to have a clean supply for himself of the things that he needed. So I did that. In using the cannabis, it made me become able to go back to work. I was a mechanic for another 23 years. I was able to live a normal life, be a normal person because of cannabis. Since meeting Jack, all the people that I've met, the friends that I've met, I've realized that the stigma that comes with cannabis, people don't realize how much it could be a benefit to you. It could be the difference between a quality life and the life of my father, who spent the last 10 years of his life in a hospital bed, also with multiple sclerosis. Not wanting to be the person that spent the rest of his life in a hospital bed, cannabis saved me. It made me the person that I am. I took 33 pills a day at one point. I now take nothing because of cannabis. People don't knock it. You don't understand how much it can help you. It can make a life for a person that may not have one. It can make you be someone more. It doesn't make you a person that, I hate the stigma of it, but there are no potheads when it comes to medicine. It's all about healing and being the best person that you can be for the rest of your life. I can't even express to you, through ingesting it for Jack, I actually every morning, with the help of my friends, I'm buttered like a turkey from the waist up in coconut oil. But the relief it gives me from my pain is second to none. You're looking at a man that the doctor's choices were OxyContin, morphine, methadone, gabapentin at 6,000 milligrams a day. At 4,800 milligrams a day, it's critical on your liver. I take none of those things anymore. And I have no need for any. All the things that I've done, the person that I am today, is because of the help of my friends and cannabis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lumpy. So Jack Kungle, we keep hearing that name, Jack Kungle. I had heard about Jack Kungle, was diagnosed with cancer. It's a small town. I've lived in Kingsville all my life. One by one, we hear of the diagnoses that people get, right? Then when later on we hear about the suffering, then later on we hear about that they die. Well, later on I heard that, Jack Kungle didn't die. I myself was very ill. And I was really afraid. It took me a long time to go to Jack's garage because of the stigma. But when we're talking about saving our lives, we can break the stigma. I could no longer fake it. I could no longer pretend that I was okay and that I was healthy because my body started to shut down in really weird ways. And so I pulled up my courage and I went to Jack's garage and I got the talk. I didn't know about the talk. I didn't know how many people Jack Kungle was seeing in the garage with the talk. And so you're here, not in Jack's garage, and you're at home, not in Jack's garage, because we want to hear the talk. Jack Kungle, come on up.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. We all have a great story to tell, and this is mine. In 1990, I was injured at work, and I have bilateral carpal tunnel and bilateral ulnar nerve entrapment and 2 torn rotator cuffs. I tore both bicep tendons. I snapped my right leg up, and I have a torn meniscus tendon, the cruciate ligament, and the cartilage. I've wore a leg brace for the last 42 years. I had no use of my upper girdle. I was on 22 different medications, and I had originally started to ingest cannabis for the pain. So I was on OxyContin, morphine, the fentanyl patch, 10-14 Tylenol number 4s, every pain medication that there was. And because of all the pain meds, I was vomiting 20, 30 times a day, and I broke 4 ribs on this side probably a couple hundred times from vomiting, and I didn't know what was going to make me sick. Coffee made me sick, everything. I stopped alcohol. I stopped consuming everything. Every time I vomited, I had breakfast, I threw up. And then the right person crossed my path, and he told me I should start to vaporize cannabis and ingest it. So I started to vaporize cannabis, and it was a big relief. But I hadn't started to ingest it yet. And then the time had come when I realized I need to, because I was already at death's door from the chemical toxicity and everything that I had after the 14 surgeries that I had. And I started to ingest the cannabis, and then almost every week, every other week, I was done this medication, I was done the next medication, I was done the next medication, and in 6 months' time, I was off every single medication. And the side effects of the medication that I was taking, so I originally took it for pain. It fixed my diabetes, it fixed my blood pressure, regulated my weight, 62 pounds. I took my leg brace off of 42 years. It gave me the use of my arms back. I couldn't wipe my ass when I went to the bathroom. I had no use of my arms at all. And then after all this, and then I had a sore back, and I had a sore back for almost 5 years, 6 years, and I sat on an ice pack because the pain was so bad, and I was told it was a pulled muscle, it was herniated disc, you're old, get used to it. And so the one day I just started passing this blood, and then goes in and we gets checked out, and now it's bladder cancer, and it was terminal cancer. They had given me 3 months if I didn't do anything, and 6 months to a year if I let them remove my bladder. The prostate was involved, and so I just hold on here before we do anything. So I went home and I educated myself, and I had to re-educate myself in everything that I thought I knew about cannabis. And one thing led to another, and so what I discovered is that the human body has an entire system in it. It's called the endocannabinoid system, and it's just strictly to process cannabis. It's the only thing that the human body is hardwired for on the planet is cannabis. And cannabinoids come from 2 places. It comes from the cannabis plant and breast milk. So this is why we're hardwired for it. So when women feed their children, this is what happens. This is what goes in and turns on your endocannabinoid system, which turns on your immune system, which gives now the baby the ability to fight disease. So this is one of the most important plants on the planet. And so there's many, many, many different ways to use cannabis. and it's through ingestion is the key. So pretty much every sickness that there is a cannabinoid deficiency. So if you haven't been eating cannabis or drinking breast milk your entire life, that's the only place it comes from. You don't get it from smoking. The smoking end of it and vaporization end of things, that is fantastic for people with asthma. As it works, it works on the lungs. So my ex-wife, she suffered from asthma and was on 3-4 puffers every single day and other asthma medication. And after watching what happened to me after about 3 years, she decided maybe that I should use this. And then also in 4 months, she was off all her steroid medication for her asthma and has not taken any asthma medication since. So since the ingestion of the cannabis for myself, I am now cancer-free, and I have been now for I was diagnosed in February of 2011. So now, and here we are at this stage, and I just recently got another all clear, and. And the biggest thing that I can say is, like, we're all talking about the stigma of cannabis. It's the safest medication that there is on the planet. Nobody's ever died in 10,000 years from this plant. It can't happen because it doesn't shut down the heart, it doesn't shut down the brain, it doesn't shut down the lungs. This is how we're designed. And the most important part is, like, if there is no heat applied, you get all the medicinal benefits that cannabis has to offer, but it doesn't cure. So this is where, when we apply the heat to the cannabis, this is where the switch takes now from THCA and it switches it to a THC delta 9. And the THC delta 9 is what cures. So the CBD addresses the issues, it addresses everything, but the THC delta 9 is what is needed. And that is what we call the full entourage effect. So when we talk about the full entourage effect of cannabis, and that means we're addressing everything. So we want all the terpenes that the plant has to offer, because every single terpene in the plant has a purpose for us. So like I say, it's the only thing on the planet that we are hardwired for, nothing else. Everything that has a nervous system will respond. The birds, your cats, your dogs. I fed it to my dog. I was putting my dog down, and he was 14 and a half years old. He was a lab, and his hind end wouldn't function. And so what I did, because of how well it worked for me, I fed it to my dog. And in 6 weeks' time, he was walking back out the dog door again. 10 weeks later, we're back in the field chasing rabbits. I got another 4.5 years out of my dog, and I didn't put him down because of his hind end. I had to put him down, you'll like this, of his age. He's the only dog that I know that loved thunderstorms. And so whenever there was a thunderstorm, I had to let him outside, and if he could jump up and catch it, he would. So he had a stroke during the thunderstorm. So he was 18 and a half years old. And then and we were still pumping the cannabis to him, and even on his way to the vet to go have him put down, he got his last cat chase in. You know, he got up and and that's all he could do was go after, and that was fine. But like I say, cannabis is the safest medication that it is. It's the most important plant on the planet, and everybody needs to know that it's been the biggest lie on the planet, because it's nothing but dollar signs. That's all it is. Nothing but dollar signs. And what everybody needs is fair access to this medication. It's simple, and we have a grower here tonight that's going to talk, and the reason he is here, because I have faith in this gentleman here. And Lumpy and I are going to be his consultants, and he will be the only licensed producers that will have people involved other than the suits and the dollars. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, Jack. realize that you're receiving a lot of information. At this time, we're going to, again, have another video from Dr. Thomas Bernard. I would invite you, if you want to stand up right now and stretch before the video is on, that's fine. This is considered our break. Because we're only 7 till 9 tonight, we wanted to cover a lot of information. So if you need to use the restroom, you may, or if you have to do something where you have to leave and come back, but we will watch the video, so let's just sort of keep that sort of, some people are watching, some people are stretching and doing other things, okay? Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, all of the marijuana-derived or the cannabis-derived medications are also all classified as Class 1 drugs. So they're all classified as narcotics, which makes them less available than they would otherwise be. So it would be nice to see that classification of even those medications changed, so that it would be more comfortable for physicians who are just learning about cannabis-derived medications. If it wasn't classified as a Class 1 drug, they might want to learn about it and be more likely to use it. So, and honestly, my own experience in my adult life with cannabis has been mostly in the stories people come and tell me about how it's benefited them. And some of those stories are quite remarkable, because when you look at the laboratory evidence we have, there's a good reason to believe for many primary cancers, breast cancer being a good example, that cannabis may prevent cancer in some situations, but also that it may be useful in treating both estrogen receptor positive and estrogen receptor negative breast cancer, and even in preventing metastatic spread of the cancer, which is really exciting for us. So I mean, again, we don't have all the answers to those questions because we haven't been able to get the research available. But when you look around the world, there is a lot of research suggesting that's a wonderful avenue of potential. And I have a lot of clients, for example, who are young women who are premenopausal, who just had a baby and then turn up to have, sadly, a breast cancer. And granted, you hope they're cured by traditional means and whatever they have to have in the way of treatment. But what if we could add to that treatment a cannabinoid that would help prevent recurrence, that would help prevent spread? Well, wouldn't that be exciting? And I feel like, in a way, we're restricted in access to a series of tools that might be life-saving for people. And then let's say we had a person who went on, unfortunately, to have more trouble with the diagnosis of something like cancer, and they had bone pain, or they had metastases to the lungs. There's some evidence in the lab, at least, that cannabinoids would really help reduce their discomfort. That is, it may even help recede lung spread of tumors from breast into lung, which is unfortunately a common direction that breast cancer takes when it spreads. And there's some lab evidence to suggest that you could actually cause those tumors to regress, not to mention that the person's shortness of breath or discomfort from the tumors that had already spread seems to get better, at least in some laboratory evidence. So colon cancer prevention, colon cancer treatment, there's some suggestion that that would be benefiting. What we're trying to do, really, is we're trying to assess a person's risk, we're trying to minimize their risk, and we're trying to optimize their quality of life. It's a theory from Stanford professor James Fries called compression of morbidity. So whatever tools we need to make that happen, we want those tools. So again, my view is we need to look at this carefully. We need to be able to have access to tools like this. We need to be able to understand the proper way to use them and who will best benefit from them. And so my own experience up to now has been limited by the fact that we're in a sort of prohibitionist legal climate, which I'm hoping is changing, and it obviously has changed to some degree. And I mean, as a physician, I would like to be able to help people with a new series of tools that are beneficial and have little drawback. And again, I'd be the first person to say we need to understand more how to use the the tools in the toolbox of the, phytocannabinoids, it's exciting. I mean, these tools have been around for thousands of years. So there's no reason now all of a sudden that we would have to reinvent the wheel, but we do have to satisfy ourselves that what we're doing is safe and that what we're doing is effective. Up to now, what we've relied on are people experimenting in the laboratory of their own life, which I'm a proponent of, but we just want to try to keep people out of harm's way, and I wish we knew enough to do that. So, but I think we're learning a lot, and it's very, I think these are exciting, there's an exciting potential for doing a lot of good for a lot of individuals. And that's the fun part about it, and hopefully the beneficial part.
Great, thank you. Moving along, I wonder if you could give us some tips for wellness.
Sure. So look, keep in mind, again, with this idea that our goal is to assess an individual's risk, to reduce their risk, to optimize their quality of life, to have them live as long as they can, being functional and not diminishing as they age. So it's called rectangularization of the morbidity curve. So you want to be like Jack LaLanne, you want to be fit and strong until you're 96 and then just die in your sleep, right? So that's the goal. Could the cannabis medications be helpful in that quest? I think they could. But keep in mind that along with anything we do in the way of marijuana-derived benefits, we want to look at the tools we know work, which are essentially lifestyle. It brings up a good point that if you're going to be using marijuana, you wonder if maybe smoking marijuana wouldn't be a good idea because of the potential negative effects of smoking. But there are many other ways to use marijuana-derived medications, either as pills or as alcohol solutions or as vaporized products where you don't expose your lungs to smoke. Although the truth is, while we can show that smoking tobacco damages people's lungs, we can document that. The studies that have been done trying to document that same damage with smoking cannabinoids actually have produced no damage that we know of. Nonetheless, the thought is that it would be better maybe to avoid that sort of thing. But along with whatever we're going to do with the addition of a cannabinoid-derived health aid, what we want to do is be fit, be active, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants is really a good way to look at it. And so, if we pay attention to those things, then we age much more gracefully. It's not that any tool in our toolbox that we're aware of will stop aging, but we can change what aging does to the body's systems. And the best tools we have right now are honestly simple tools like the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle, where when you look at individuals in the EPIC trial in Europe, between the ages of 70 and 90, if those individuals just ate a Mediterranean-style diet and they basically were a bit more active, they reduced their death from all causes by 50%. We don't even have a drug that comes anywhere near that. And I'm not sure the cannabinoids would either, although there is some evidence that cannabinoid-derived medications may have a role in reducing inflammation and what's called oxidative stress from metabolism in the body. And those are some of the hallmarks of aging. So maybe there's going to be room for those tools to be useful in retarding the effects of aging, right? And making it possible for us to follow a therapeutic or beneficial lifestyle and diet, into our very old years. That's the goal, to make it possible to be active and fit and vibrant, to reduce, because the hallmarks of aging are inflammation, glycation, which is the sticking of sugar to proteins, and the decline of our ability to effectively produce energy in our bodies. Those are the hallmarks of aging. And interestingly, we have some reason to believe that the cannabinoids themselves, the marijuana, medical marijuana itself, may at least reduce inflammation. It seems like it may in fact help with sugar control in diabetics. And as far as the decline of energy production, again, most of that seems to be tied into inflammation and damage to the little furnaces of the cells which are called mitochondria. And cannabinoids look like they may have a protective effect there too. You know, remember there was a drug released on the market which was a cannabinoid drug, Ramonabad or Accomplia, a few years ago. It was released in Europe. And it was a drug marketed originally for weight loss. But that one pill a day controlled your blood pressure, lowered your blood sugar, helped you lose weight, and lowered your cholesterol, all in one pill. It was like freaking amazing. So, but unfortunately, in the European trials, some people, about 10% of them, became anxious when they took it. So for that reason, and for medical legal concerns, it was taken off the market. But it shows you the potential, you know, the power of a cannabinoid-derived medication like that that seemed to do so much. Because remember, the receptors for cannabinoid-derived chemicals in the body, first of all, we have naturally derived cannabinoids that are there all the time. The classic neurotransmitter is called anandamide. And you know, if any of you have done yoga or studied yogic philosophy, ananda, that word in Sanskrit, means bliss. So it's called anandamide. It's like a bliss amino acid sort of thing, right? So that's a naturally occurring neurotransmitter. And it has, you know, effects all the time in our body, much like we have naturally occurring narcotics, right? You know, the endorphins, so-called, or enkephalins. So I think what we're looking to do is find ways to take advantage of this widespread endocannabinoid system in the body, which, by the way, you know, one of the interests we have in that, if I haven't mentioned this before, is that the endorphin system of narcotic receptors includes receptors in the lower part of the brainstem. The lower part of the brainstem is where you control your respiration and your heart rate. That's why people die of overdose if they take too much narcotic. But the cannabinoids, which may be equally effective in some cases in relieving pain, there's no cannabinoid receptors that can suppress respiration and heart rate. There are no receptors in that part of the brain. So that's cool. I mean, no matter how much you take, you're not going to die from that overdose. You know, you may feel wonky, but you're not going to die. And that's one of the reasons we've honestly been, you know, also excited about the potential for this class of intervention agents. So, yes, you know, a good lifestyle has to accompany anything we hope to achieve with cannabinoid-derived medications. And again, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. Think of it that way. And the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle is really what we have the most evidence for.
Beautiful. I'm wondering now if we could look at the next right thing for people that are concerned about their health and they're looking forward. What direction could you give them?
So, first of all, keep in mind, fortunately for us all, we live in a democracy. So what we want to do is we want to influence the political process, as people have done by electing a new, younger prime minister who maybe has more relaxed views about marijuana being made available to people. And I would say to everybody, first of all, talk to your politicians. You know, let's see where all the legal, you know, sort of direction with regard to cannabis and marijuana is going. And then there are physicians who are very supportive and knowledgeable about prescribing medical marijuana and giving people the authorization to get a marijuana card, so that if you had, you know, your supply of marijuana, you wouldn't be in any way under any kind of legal duress. And I think it's very important for people to have, you know, that sort of clearance, so that they don't feel like something's going to happen to them untoward if they happen to be, you know, on the street or they get stopped in their car and they have marijuana there. Not to say we should be smoking marijuana in the car, obviously, but, you know, even if for some reason it comes up that you had some in your glove box, you shouldn't be vilified for that nor arrested. And the way to avoid that right now is to get a physician to sign for you to get authorization. Now, my hope is that as time goes on, people will not require a medical card to have marijuana, but currently that's the case. So, see your physician, you can talk to them about that. If your physician is not comfortable prescribing medical marijuana and you have a legitimate reason for it, the way things stand, there are many physicians that your own doctor can refer you to. And there is even the Canadian Cannabis Clinics group that has started up fairly recently, and there is one in Windsor. They're all around, really, in many cities throughout Canada. I would have to say my own experience with the Canadian Cannabis Clinics has been a bit mixed, in that it still depends on the individual physician who's working in that clinic. And keep in mind that while you need authorization from a physician, you have to realize that not every physician you see is going to want to give you medical marijuana to help you sleep, or to help your anxiety, or to help your pain. They might give you medical marijuana very readily if you have cancer, and that might be the only thing they'll prescribe it for. So you'll have to find, like you would with anything else, a practitioner who's supportive of your own personal health goals. And you want to have a, kind of a rationale. Well, why do you want marijuana? So right now, the way the legal system is, it doesn't appear that marijuana for recreational use is being either encouraged or legitimized by the system the way it is. What is true is that the indications for which a physician will write a medical marijuana authorization have been a bit more liberal. It doesn't have to be that you're dying of cancer. It could be for sleep disturbance, for anxiety, for pain management. There are many other indications. And I'm hoping, as we learn more about it, it'll be easier and easier for people to access cannabinoids and medical marijuana. My hope would be that physicians won't necessarily be in the middle of that, but even if the legalities of physician involvement with prescribing marijuana change, still it would be a good idea for you to be able to talk to your doc about, hey, I'm interested in marijuana and I happen to get some through, some other thing, just like you would about, say, alcohol intake. My own experience and view of it is the cannabinoids are probably safer than alcohol. They're probably safer than a lot of narcotics. But the way life is, not too loose, not too tight. You don't want to overdo anything. And I think probably marijuana and cannabinoids are sort of like that. You want to find what place they might have in your life. You want to use a balanced approach to understanding what they might do for you. And hopefully get some benefit with no downside. And we will live long and prosper.
Okay. Well, I would like to invite you to go to Rate MD website and fill out the questionnaire there. It's always good to get your opinion, and thank you for taking the time to do that. Well, thank you, Dr. Bernard, for your time, for
Pleasure.
your insight, and for your open mind. I certainly appreciate all the years that you have put in to helping all the people that you have helped. I continue great success, and again, I thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Okay, this being our first event, this is the launch of Green Thinking. Again, you are very welcome to be here. Keep an eye on our website, please, www.green-thinking.net. What we'll do is we'll put this video up on the website. I didn't expect as many people to leave. We wanted you to hear that information, so I apologize. We are learning and growing and all as well, and so check that out on the website to get a lot of good information off of there. I will say that Dr. Thomas Bernard was the only doctor that would re-sign for Lumpy when he needed it. He has been a very instrumental man in this process of moving cannabis and green thinking forward. Bravo, Dr. Thomas Bernard. The exciting part to me is that many have gone before me on this path. This whole business about being alone in our darkest hour, it can be very frightening. And so we have with us a lady that has traveled from Texas to come and share her story with you and a lot of knowledge. And so I invite Pamela Javid Hames, please, to come up.
Wow, there's a lot of people here. It's wonderful to look out and see people that are my age, that have gone through so much stuff. Hasn't reached even the tip of the iceberg of what's happening in our lives with cannabis. It's the wild, wild west out there. Even here, this is just the beginning of it. It's the tip of the iceberg. Cannabis is not dangerous. That is something that has been pumped into us from my grandfather, you know. It's been going on for years. It's time to stop. I think of all the people that have taken, yeah. You know, it's a frightening thing to take cannabis illegally. It's frightening where you go for it. You go to the dark alleys. This is something that we need to get out of the dark. It's something that is happening right now. That's why I call it the wild, wild west. I live in Texas. It's an illegal state. They had just recently made it CBD hemp oil, which is crap, by the way. I'll be the 15th person to tell you that. Don't even bother to purchase something like that. It's a no bueno. It really is. And you have no idea what's really in it, especially in the States. We're dealing with hemp oil. It's industrial. That should tell you something right there. But the FDA allows that because they're blowing smoke while they're hiding the really good thing, is what they're doing. My name is Pamela Javid Hames. I have, it's not my site, it's another friends of mine's site. It's called Cannabis Oil Success Stories. And it's, thank you. I tell you what, it's one of the best sites that's on Facebook. If there's anything called social media that could be of any benefit to anybody, this is something that you want to get onto, because there's only John and I as administrators that are on that site. And what we do is we try to train as many people as we possibly can to be able to pass on the information even on that page. Even on that page. We had 2.5 years ago, 2,000 people on it. The really sad thing is we have over 60,000 people. Everybody sick. Or caretakers. Or caretakers. That's sad. That really is. But with the strength and hope that we have is that we have a place that we can go to where we can get information that we pass on to one another. And it's not just information. It's people that have actually gone through things like that have been here. They've gone through it. They have cancer. They're doing the things that we're suggesting for them to do, and they're coming out of it and coming back on the site week after week saying, hey, and these are the scans that I've got. It's like, that is so uplifting to me. I can't even begin to tell you. It's an addiction of mine, and it's a really good addiction. Now, I'm loving it because I get to help people. I have hepatitis C. I've got IBS, which is ileitis, colitis, diverticulosis. COPD, which is an acute bronchitis because I smoked forever like I meant it, you know. There's a lot of people here that we were convinced for years that smoking was just great. Hey, I love to smoke. But it doesn't love me. I've got asthma, and my allergies just kick me twice a year. If my allergies get to me, then my asthma picks up. When my asthma picks up, my acute bronchitis kicks in, and then I'm on the nebulizer, I'm on the puffers, I've got my steroid going. Vaporizing is the key to that. To vaporize actually relaxes your bronchial tubes. Your air passages are relaxing from it. We're not talking about smoke like smoke that would be coming, you can see the smoke. No, when I use my vaporizer, thanks to Jack, there's Jack again stuck in that thing, little karmic wheel there. He taught me to put it on 340, and then I won't feel the smoke. And thank God, because I can't handle a big high. I'm not a high person. I'm just not. Yeah, I'll smoke a little tiny bit here and there. But I'm one of those that, when it comes to cannabis, it's like I would rather drink like a quarter glass of wine than drink the whole bottle. Well, I'm the same way with cannabis. I might take a puff. I might take two, but I like to keep my feet on the ground. And when people are taking mass quantities of cannabis oil because of the ingestion, there's all different ways to be able to take this marvelous plant, and that's why vaporizing. You can use it as a nose spray. Yeah, I've got that recipe if anybody wants it. People that use it that have gliomas or brain tumors, they use that, and it's a huge success. Anything that goes to the nose goes right to the brain. You've got suppositories. I use suppositories personally because I don't like to get the high. So I take those at night. I have, let me see if they put it up. They did not put it up. I have a sheet of paper out here. There's people. Jack printed out a whole bunch of stuff. There's 3 or 4 papers out here that are really important. Oh yeah, I see that now. This is the wheel of the cannabinoids, telling you which and each one does for what, like THC or THCA, CBDA, THCG, or no, THCV, which is the next one. Anyway, where was I? Come on, where was I? Vaporizing. Oh, the different suppositories. You guys just couldn't say it, could you? Yeah, nobody would come out with that one. Suppositories. When you're doing the backdoor method is what it's called, is that you're getting all of the cannabinoids into your system. I do it when I'm sleeping. It's actually a wonderful avenue for people that have colon cancer, or if they have lung cancer, a suppository. You want to do suppositories. Of course, orally would be great in addition to it, but suppositories, they go to your lungs through that way. The hemorrhoidal vein. Thank you, Prescott, for telling me about the hemorrhoidal vein. It's one of the largest veins in the body. Wait, I'm going to look at my notes. Wait a minute. I'm going to talk about vaginal suppositories. For women that have cancer of any part of the female, you take and you insert in the vaginal area, and then you take and wet a tampon, and you put it in behind that so it doesn't absorb or leak out of the body. It's perfect. People and women use it all the time. In fact, they can go both ways. When you have cancer, you're willing to go to any lengths to get better. Diet is huge. It's all about our immune system, which is something that is really lacking in us right now. If there's anything I could tell you that you needed to do, is to throw your frickin' microwave right out the door, is what I would tell you to do. And my heart's just pounding because I told you that. But it's the truth. Another thing that I would tell you is never eat soy anything again. Soy is everything soy is Roundup ready. It's all genetically modified. When I say it's Roundup ready, you might not know what that means. It means that it has injected in its DNA Agent Orange. And when they take and they plant soy that is genetically modified with Roundup in it, they spray the fields and everything dies except for the soybeans. And soybean, if you look, it is in everything. If you rip open a package to cook with it, it's got soybean oil in it. It's in your dog food. It's in everything. I can't even begin to tell you, except there's one place you won't find it. You won't find it on the shelf to be able to buy it to actually put in your cooking food. I just noticed that the other day. You can't buy soy oil. Did you know that? Jack, did you know that? Yeah, that's amazing. You think that they would really promote that crap, but they don't. Soybean is an estrogen driver. They feed it to the animals, they feed it to the chickens, it's in everything. It's in everything. And it's one of the worst foods that you could have because they've allowed for that to happen. they've allowed it. And you get a lot of food from the States that comes over here, you know? That stuff is genetically modified. It is Roundup ready. Same thing with wheat. Wheat is another one. It's very unfortunate that we have gluten-free. Gluten-free. That means that the wheat that we have right now has changed its DNA in the last 50 years. That our bodies, when we eat it, we swallow it, it goes through our digestive tract and we poop it, but it isn't doing anything, nothing, except it's creating an allergic reaction in us. And so that's why everybody has this gluten-free, which is a huge selling point for General Mills or any of the other people. It's like, oh, now they're separating it out. Now you've got 2 shelves that you get to shop from. And we don't see it happening because it's so subtle. Anyway, I'm not going to get lost on the food. I'm going to tell you about serapeptase or serepatase. It's something that if you're ill or if you're taking care of someone, then you use that. You can find it on Amazon. I do all my shopping on Amazon. It's for people that need to be detoxed. When you're taking chemotherapy or radiation, or you've got mass quantities of drugs in your system, painkillers and whatnot, those painkillers are circling in your system day after day, and you have what opioid constipation, which they've just recently showed us on TV because they're selling more drugs for the opioid constipation. Yeah. They finally told us that we have it, like we didn't know. So serepatase or serapeptase helps get rid of the toxins from out of our system. It's wonderful. It's great for people that have anything wrong with their lungs. If you have something wrong with your prostate, what's another one? It's a great inflammatory, anti-inflammatory. It's wonderful, along with turmeric. I don't even want to go into turmeric. It's or turmeric, depending upon what English Nazi you want to talk to. I've always said turmeric, but it's like it acts like it's a steroid. It's natural and it's wonderful. I take 3 every day in the morning and 3 in the evening, and I can bend. It's one of those things that takes the inflammation from out of your system. And these are just herbs. They're simple herbs that we don't hear about anymore because our doctors won't talk about that. There's no money in that. It's a downright shame. What's another one? Here's another one we'd like to talk about is enemas. Yeah. Enemas are actually one of the most beautiful things that you can do for someone who's really ill. When they're ill, they are circling all of those toxins in their body. We don't die of chemotherapy and we don't die of radiation. We die of the toxins that are in our bodies that our doctors keep on giving us more drugs for. Here, you're in the hospital, you can't poop. They come in with some type of a vegetable laxative. They don't even care if you poop at the hospital. Get out, go, That's one of the most important things is for you to be able to eliminate that in your body. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. Shh, enemas, oh my God. Coffee enemas are wonderful. It works with your bile duct. It's palamate. Palamate is what it's called. It's an acid that's in coffee. When it hits your bile duct, it goes to your hemorrhoidal vein, which goes to your portal system, which dumps into your liver, and your body pushes it out. It's gone. You can hold an enema, which is about 4 ounces of a coffee enema. If you can hold that for 15 minutes, you've cleaned your body, your liver, and all of those, and kidneys, 2.5 times. 2.5 times. If you can think about that, of someone who's filled with toxins, it's not even about getting rid of the stools in your bowel. Is just, it's a perk that goes along with it. But let's see. opioid. There's a couple of things. Hang on. We ain't even close. People who take care of someone who's sick, people who are ill, people that are under a tremendous amount of stress, they've got a DNA chromosome. It's called a telomere. A telomere is part of the long strand that's in your DNA, and on the very tip of it, it has like a little shoelace that holds it together. And the more stress that you have, the chemotherapy, the radiation, all of those things that goes on in your body when you're under those, as well as a person that's taking care of you, those strands begin to unravel. And one thing about cannabis is that it helps hold it all together. It really does. Over a long period of time, if you're taking cannabis, it holds those things together. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for cannabis. I had a thyroid that was totally, levothyroxine, they couldn't get it strong enough for me. I also was someone who was super depressed. I've been depressed for years. You know, they gave me so much medication. I felt sorry for my son, is what it was, because I was always felt like I was just stupid or off balance. I never felt balanced. And when I started taking the cannabis is when things started to pull together. It didn't happen all at once. I went to the doctors and I said, look, I'm going to quit all my medications. And he went, oh my God, you're not going to quit your medication. I said, yeah, I'm going to quit all of them. I said, and you, because you're supporting me, are going to help me. And he was like, oh, I don't even know about this. I said, yeah, and I'll come back in a couple of months. I said, and see how I do. You'll be able to look at it, we'll do the check, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I didn't go back for a year and a half, and I was really scared for my hepatitis C and how my enzymes were because they were kind of dangerously high. And when I went back to him, he said that my enzymes were almost normal. I no longer had to take thyroid medication, which I had taken for over 30 years, levothyroxine. I know there's a lot of women here that take levothyroxine. And I know many people that have weaned themselves off of it with cannabis. I'm not saying you should do that, but you ought to do it. You know? My doctor could not believe it. Couldn't believe it. I just went and had a colonoscopy. I'm a braggart right now. About 2 months ago, and my doctor, I had 7 spots of holes in my intestines for the diverticulosis. I only had 2. They were very small, and he showed me where the scar tissue was for the other ones, and he said, that doesn't happen. So I want you to know, cannabis, no matter what anybody has ever told you, the information that you have gotten is wrong, and you need to do your own research. Don't let anybody do it. Go to that cannabis oil success story site. You'd be surprised. I'm posting all the time on every disease that's out there so that you will be informed. Just gave me chills. For you to be informed. Well, that's my music. Gotta go. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Pamela came from Texas for you to hear this information. Thank you, Pamela. It is a beginning. Cannabis oil success stories on Facebook. Start to learn, educate yourself. If you're dealing with something, if you have a condition, go to Cannabis Oil Success Stories, put in your condition, and start learning. We are brave people standing up. Well, not really brave, not so much, but we're standing up one at a time, and we are powerful. We take our health into our own hands, and we need good product for that. I'd like to call up Claudio Mastronardi, please.
Good evening. My name is Claudio Mastronardi, owner of MCM Acres and Natura Naturals, a local greenhouse operation in the final stages of obtaining a license from Health Canada to grow medical cannabis. I'd like to thank Jack and everyone involved for providing me with the opportunity to speak. I was fortunate enough to have met Jack a couple years ago and it was his compassionate nature to help others and help myself that brings me here tonight. Thanks, Jack. Tonight, as well as many other instances, I've listened to incredible stories of transformation due to cannabis. What I have seen and heard over the past 2 years with regards to the healing powers of cannabis has been amazing. I feel this is just the beginning as the taboo walls of cannabis are coming down and the healing powers are finally revealed. Over 2 years ago, a particular story touched me deeply. It was a story about a young girl named Charlotte who was 5 years old and suffering from mild seizures as a result of being diagnosed with Dravet syndrome. Her parents and doctors have exhausted all roads and efforts to help her condition with virtually no success until someone had suggested giving her cannabis. The reduction in seizures was immediate. This story affected me very deeply, and it captured my heart. I decided to make it my own personal mission to do what I could to help others. The knowledge that I have gained through many years of experience in growing safe vegetables could be used to grow safe cannabis. From that day forward, along with some fantastic employees, we commenced our journey to make this happen. We began the application process to grow medical cannabis. During the application process, I could never forget the story about Charlotte. I decided to act on these thoughts. After numerous introductions and visits, we were able to gain Canadian exclusivity to the strain that helped Charlotte. Although we have the exclusivity to this strain, we will also be growing other strains in various THC and CBD combinations. Allow me to explain a little bit more about MCM Acres and Natura Naturals. We're a 48-year-old family-owned greenhouse operation growing greenhouse vegetables. The reason we exist is to supply people with vegetables that don't have the means to grow it themselves. This is the exact same philosophy behind the creation of Natura Naturals, to provide for those who don't have the ability to grow it themselves. I would like to state that we support the theory of people being able to grow their own medicine. We're simply here to help the ones that can't. Thank you. It's Natura Naturals' goal and mission to be the safest, most affordable option for those considering to add cannabis to their life. Another goal is to be the lowest priced licensed producer of medical cannabis. We support this offering by offering a compassionate program to discount the medicines to the ones who may not necessarily be able to afford it. Between our family and our staff, thank you. Between our family and our staff, we bring a combined 60 years of plant growing knowledge, a combined 27 years of third-party audited food safety audits, implementations of individual nutrient feeding, a fully integrated and biologically controlled environment where we introduce good bugs to eat the bad bugs, and we precisely control that environment. A facility that has installed a geothermal air exchange to create a more comfortable plant environment while reducing our energy consumption. A facility that creates its own electrical power, which reduces our environmental footprint. A facility that uses its own CO2 output as a resource for encouraging plant growth. A facility that reclaims all of its own water and nutrients as to not exhaust it into lakes or water tables. This translates into the fact that we're a company that cares. We care about the environment, we care about our employees, we care about your medicine, and most importantly, we care about you. Thank you again, I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Claudio. Our next speaker traveled over 8 hours on a train to be here with you this evening. I'd like to call up Lori McCurran, please.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm very impressed with the turnout. I'd like to introduce you to myself. My name is Lori McEachern. I'm the Managing Director of the Medicinal Cannabis Patients Alliance of Canada. We're actually a federally incorporated not-for-profit volunteer patient alliance. We incorporated 3.5 years ago, and we are made up entirely of volunteers, entirely patients, all who use cannabis legally in Canada and have for as long as we've been able to here. My personal story started, I used to be a professional, and then over 20 years ago, all 10 toes went numb. And it progressed up till my knees and then in my hands. I went through years and years and years of diagnosis, biopsies and pokes and prods and blood tests and everything. And then one day it got so bad that I couldn't take the pain anymore, and I went to the doctor. From the day I was given OxyContin at the lowest dose, I had to quit my job because I couldn't write an email anymore. I knew how to do it, but it just wouldn't work. At the height of the pharmaceuticals I was on for my conditions, I have an idiopathic neuropathy. Nobody knows what it is, or what caused it, what to do about it. I was told all I can do is figure out how to deal with the pain. I've been diagnosed with IBS, fibromyalgia. I've had a back injury that required disc excision. And when the pain hit me and I was put on the pharmaceuticals, at the height of that, I was taking three 80-milligram OxyContins every day, as well as 12 Percocet, 2,700 milligrams of Neurontin, 75 milligrams of Effexor, 20 milligrams of amitriptyline, and I still couldn't sleep, so I top it off with beer. Hey, you do what you can, right? I was given these drugs by a fellow that I refer to as Dr. Drug. When he got me at that level, he had me sign a contract saying that I had to be nice to the staff, I couldn't swear, I couldn't be annoying. I had to buy all the drugs from the pharmacy that he ran. If I broke this contract, he could throw me out and not be my doctor anymore. At that point, I was nothing but a drooling mess in a wheelchair, or in a lazy boy rocker in the corner. I barely remember anything except every second Tuesday when I had to go and get another bag of pills. One day I was looking at the internet and I found Mark Ware, and I got a referral. And within 2 weeks, I was at McGill University talking to Dr. Mark Ware of CCIC, or the Canadian Consortium for the Investigation of Cannabinoids, and a psychologist about my pain. And he asked if I'd ever heard of cannabis for neuropathic pain. Well, unbeknownst to me, I'd been self-medicating since I was about 14 for whatever issues I'd had. And only in retrospect did I start realizing what I'd been doing all those years. He gave me the information I needed. I went back to my doctor. I got the application for the MMAR, and I got signed up for the Montreal Compassion Club. I started getting cannabis from the Compassion Club within a week. The MMAR form was sent back to the doctor. There was something wrong with it. He wouldn't sign it. He kept putting me off. Meanwhile, I was getting better with cannabis. I was asking to have my OxyContin reduced. He wasn't sure how to do that and had to ask the specialist, how do you do that? Basically, I was doing really well, and then he cut me off. So now I was stuck with no access to the pharmaceuticals I'd been given. I didn't have a doctor. I couldn't get them at a walk-in clinic. You can't get them in ER. You can't get them anywhere, and I was afraid I was going to die. So was my son. So he took me to the hospital and talked the ER doctor into giving me 5 days worth of pills. I got only OxyContin, only Percocet, and only in 20 milligrams. Got a ride to Montreal, got $700 worth of cannabis, went home, and 2 weeks later I was clean. That was in September 2007, and I quit drinking alcohol that same year. My pharmaceutical bill for 3 years is $27 for an antibiotic because I had an abscess in my jaw. Everything else I deal with cannabis. I eat it, I rub it on my skin. I take it in glycerin. I vaporize it. I smoke it. Until yesterday, here's fingers crossed, Jack. I was smoking cigarettes too, but hopefully I smoked the last one of those yesterday. And thank you, Tom. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody that I know here and everybody else that came out tonight, because this is a story that needs to be told. This needs to be told by every single person that can tell it. This needs to be listened to by every single person who can listen. And if 2 people can tell 2 people, can tell 2 people, can tell 2 people, the truth will get out there. And the pharmaceutical clutch that we are in today, the inability we have to function on whatever level because we've been given chemicals that were never endogenous to our body in the first place, can be replaced with cannabinoids. They can make you feel better. There can be a life after drugs. We are not drug seeking, we are health seeking people. That's what we need to know.
I'd like to expand a little bit on what Lori said about doctors. I was fired from my doctor in Harrow at the clinic because I asked for my medical marijuana card. No doctor would take me on in Essex County. I went to the Kingsville clinic, I went to the Leamington clinic, I went to the Harrow clinic, and I invited every staff member to attend our evening. None of them are here. I'm just saying that. We offered them to come free. Anybody on their staff team, nurse, doctor, you answer the phone, you are welcome for free. They're not here. Moving on. I would like to invite our last speaker, Kim Martell. Thank you.
Thank you for all coming out. I see a lot of human beings in front of me. I don't see any person that I would discriminate against, because we all go through this life with our burdens on our shoulders. Some of us are parents trying to be caregivers for sick and dying children, and at the same time trying to get our parents the comfort they need in their life. My husband and I and our son, we wear the memory of our little girl, Cadence Hope Martell, around our necks. She passed in June of this year. So it's all still pretty fresh and raw for me, and if I break down, I apologize right now. I want to say that cannabis offered us a great deal of hope. And what you said, sir, about that Charlotte Figge story touching people, can you please raise your hand if you saw that Sanjay Gupta news presentation, and by damned if it didn't touch you too? Our daughter was just like Charlotte Figge. We struggled, we stressed, we fought like hell with the medical system, with doctors who were giving our daughter things that just, we'd scratch our heads and say, how is this making her healthier? How is this helping her body to build strength against these seizures and all the health complications that come with it? Many of the medications that people take these days, and specific to our daughter's case, necessitate illness. They necessitate other complications that require other medications to treat those complications. And it's a chain reaction of a Band-Aid approach that doesn't work. It doesn't work in Canada, and it doesn't work around the world. It doesn't work anymore. How many people here, if I could see a show of hands, please, who have had to take a pharmaceutical for a health condition? Wow, okay. How many people are satisfied? How many people maybe are satisfied with the effects that that pharmaceutical had in dealing with your health crisis. I think that speaks for itself, doesn't it? How many people here are looking after an aging parent whose health is failing? How many people here are trying to look after a sick child and struggling with the doctors and the medical establishment? I'd like to read you a letter that I wrote to Justin Trudeau recently. And I encourage every one of you, if you believe in this, if you're passionate about making change, to write your members of parliament, to write your government. Justin Trudeau, fortunately, is a guy who's got his ears open to Canadians. I don't care whether you support him or not, but he's willing to listen to each and every one of you and send your letters, share your stories, make your voice heard that you want a healthcare revolution. Cannabis is a dietary essential. It's something that, as was discussed tonight, our systems embrace it. It's a plant, people. It's a vegetable. I'd love to say, hey, go home, plant some seeds. But I didn't say that, okay? I'm not going to say that. So if you can bear with me, I'd like to read from a letter that I wrote to Justin Trudeau. I'm just reading parts of it because it's lengthy and I had a lot to say to him. Okay. Our little girl, Cadence Hope Martel, passed away in June at the age of 10. She died because of a sudden and confusing catastrophic dive in sodium levels that sent her into status, coma, and ultimate death. It breaks my heart. People with intractable epilepsy face a high risk of sudden death. Sudden death, or SUDEP, stands for Sudden Unexplained Death in Epilepsy Patients. The events leading to sudden death likely are related to the cause of a seizure disorder, the failure of pharmacological therapy, and the considerable loss of quality of life. More specific research is needed to look into the causes, and we need out-of-the-box therapies now. Intractable epilepsy affects approximately 12,900 Canadians. Intractable epilepsy. That means these people are suffering. You can't imagine how bad they're suffering. I can assure you that every one of these people and their caregivers live in fear and anguish, not unlike that of living in a war. I have nightmares and jump at any sound that sounds like a person choking, thinking it's Cadence even still. My daughter has been gone for months now. Our whole family felt so helpless seeing our little girl in so much distress. Even now that she has passed, we live with that, and we know still other families survive with these challenges. This is not how I wish to remember my first and only baby girl, but this was largely her life and our life, and ultimately she did not survive the conventional health care that Canada stands by. The tragedy is that healthcare in Canada grossly fails 40% of all Canadians with epilepsy because no one is willing to invest in and stand by novel and new therapies outside pharmaceuticals. I had been fiercely advocating for cannabis therapy for the past year and a half, and before that, I was advocating for placental stem cell therapy. This was not for a shot in the dark. It was because these therapies were improving the quality of life for my child. Unfortunately, we could not continue them because of factors that should not have been hurdles had our country supported them. Because our government did not actively support therapies like cannabis, like placental stem cell, like hyperbaric oxygen therapy for epilepsy, we continue to miss opportunities to greatly ease the suffering of our children and their families. I could tell you things about placental stem cell that would blow your mind and have you shouting, why don't we utilize this medical waste? I continue to advocate for therapies like these because these are families There are families like ours that are still fighting to improve the life for their children, however long their children are destined to live. I understand these families very well, and though I know that we may not save our children from having their lives cut short, we can sure as hell do better to improve their lives while they are here. My daughter gave me a faith I never had in my 20s. She grew me up, so to speak, and opened my eyes to compassion and a drive to do better by her and others. I would love to tell you how amazing she was, but there are not enough words. She was a force. She never complained about anything. She was nonverbal. She was incontinent. She was tube-fed. She needed routine trips to the doctors and many medical tests. She always had a smile on her face when she could, and she never cried. She was such a force. These kids lift us all up to a higher calling. This was to Justin Trudeau. I said, I see you as a loving father because it's important to identify with a person. I see you as a loving father, and I hope I can impress upon the father in you to make a call as Prime Minister that only you can do. Families are desperately eager for change in the way we manage the health of these special kids and survivors of intractable epilepsy. I have visions for amendments that foresee Canada taking its rightful place as a leader in placental stem cell and cannabis innovation. We need support centers for our families under these enormous challenges and seek to make life easier for us rather than the current system that makes us jump through hoops and fails our children. It was a Canadian who discovered stem cells, and this country has a proud heritage of developing excellent strains of cannabis. Back before my daughter went into hospital back in June, my husband, who's amazing, by the way, and he's the biggest caretaker of our family, has allowed me to advocate and be out there in our community. And without him, so thank you, Colin, because without you, I wouldn't have been able to stand at these events and speak to people and reach out to people. But I was at a conference, a Dignified Access conference, and we talked about so many important things that needed to be talked about. And I went away that weekend leaving my family and leaving my daughter. She was doing pretty good. And I learned so much, and I was so inspired by the people at this conference. And I came home so pumped and so hopeful. And when I came home, Cadence had taken a turn. And I went away for the weekend. But by Monday morning, I'm a school bus driver, and when I came home from my school bus run, she'd gone into a status seizure that lasted an hour. And I just knew when the ambulance came that it would be the last ride she took to the hospital, and maybe call that a mother's instinct. But I knew it was it. When I came home to my family, my little girl had taken a turn, and shortly thereafter she went into an hour-long seizure. The ambulance came and she was hospitalized in London, Ontario. Many times she'd gone to the hospital by ambulance. I knew it would be her last trip. The doctors pumped her full of IV solution to stabilize her sodium levels, morphine, midazolam, Dilantin. Cadence spent the first week in pediatric critical care, seizing constantly despite being heavily drugged. Medications, by the way, they never worked to control her seizures. She had a breathing tube that assisted her breathing, but contributed to her developing a MRSA infection in her lungs. Due to the sodium loss, there was a significant damage to the myelin coating on her brainstem. She was losing the primitive functions that would have enabled her to clear away the fluid in her chest. As her breathing became so labored, I agonized over the likelihood that our little girl would drown violently in the secretions from the infection. I made a call to a friend within the medical cannabis community, a plea for help. 16 hours later, my friend arrived with a cannabis elixir, medicinal and balanced, for my little girl. It was something gentle I could give her through her feeding tube. My friend stayed up all night to prepare this for my daughter and came straight away with it. At this point, Cadence had already gone a week without her cannabis medicine. which, by the way, was doing a great job of controlling her seizures. And the sodium thing came completely out of left field, which could have been related to the fact that my daughter just didn't have strong DNA to begin with and spent the better portion of her childhood bombarded with ineffective therapies. The drugs weren't working at all, and her stats were spiking erratically. The infection in her chest was getting out of hand. With urgent pleas to the doctor and much hesitation from him, the doctor agreed that so long as we had a plan and I was the one to give Cadence the cannabis elixir, that it would be permissible. I gave her 5 cc's of elixir every hour through her feeding tube. The doctor asked us what we expected would happen. I did not have unreasonable expectations for a miraculous recovery, but I knew what cannabis can do, and it did not disappoint. I knew the elixir would not bring her back, but damned if it didn't stop her seizures, completely calm her stats, and seemingly resolve the MRSA infection in her body. Not only did she pass peacefully with one final and clear breath, she survived without life support almost a week longer than the doctors and nursing staff anticipated. It reminded me of the amazing things her dad and I witnessed after her first stem cell treatment. So if cannabis isn't dignified medicine for palliative care, I don't know what is. Just when we started giving Cadence the elixir, I was explaining to one of the nurses caring for Cadence how we had been advocating for cannabis for medical purposes, and that we traveled as a family to Ottawa to be present for the extracts trial at the Supreme Court of Canada back in March. After all, people like Cadence were the reason for the constitutional challenge. No one should be forced to smoke their medicine. No one. And kids certainly can't smoke it, and a person with the feeding tube can't smoke their medicine. Many kids like Cadence take their meals and medicine through a tube in their belly. Cadence was the living, breathing example for the need for extracts of high quality and affordable cannabis. Our being at that hearing was so important for all of us. A young boy with Dravet syndrome named Liam was also there with his family. These kids need to take precedence over the rights of recreational users. Many families are getting substandard medicine, while we're getting substandard medicine from LPs, and some LPs weren't owning up to the challenge of providing excellent quality medicine, subsidized affordably for the patients that need them. And people were going broke trying to afford medicine they couldn't even use in its dried form. There were no assurances or guidance, but we're hoping to change that. Doctors haven't a working knowledge of cannabis as medicine or confidence in prescribing. Now, I should say many doctors, because some doctors it's coming, they're learning. So many hurdles, yet I thought still it would be more successful to fight for cannabis for Cadence than placental stem cell, which also alleviated her suffering. How much more can us parents do without support? The pharmaceutical approach added to her suffering. The ketogenic diet ultimately failed and brought further complications to Cadence's life. Removing half my child's brain with the chance that her seizures can be reduced seemed far too invasive. What else can we do but fight for a plant that offers hope? It's tremendously frustrating that something we can grow ourselves for pennies to ease suffering for thousands of sick and suffering people is withheld because of stigma and politics. Knowing full well that this budding industry will take full advantage of our desperation is like a stab in the heart. Now families are at the mercy of licensed producers, and we still haven't the guidance and the support from the medical establishment. So I hope that will change. All the power to the families who learn themselves how to cultivate, juice raw, even harvest and make tinctures, edibles, and oils from this plant. As was discussed from another speaker, it is very important that you embrace your ability to educate yourself in all aspects of cannabis medicine. It is necessary for the future for people with good intentions to know how to utilize plant medicine. the desire to heal ourselves with other means is ever strengthened when a loved one takes a journey into conventional medicine, only to find more suffering that becomes more magnified. There must be institutions that explore alternatives. So I had this whole conversation about the extracts trial and how hopeful I was about the decision. Cadence's nurse went home that night and watched the news until he could find out the verdict of the extracts trial. The irony in all of this is that the next day he came in with happy news, eager to share with me that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of extracts for the medicinal use of cannabis. I hugged him so hard, and all I could do was cry. It was that very moment that the doctor showed my husband and I the results of the MRI that would confirm Cadence's brain was shrinking and her primitive functions were gone. To see her in the hospital bed all hooked up to tubes and wires, her body looked healthy and her heart and breathing was strong, seemingly stronger with the dosing of cannabis. She looked like she was sleeping soundly, but that was not the case. Her brain was all but dead, and it was only a matter of time before her body would follow. Strange things happen to a person who has been fighting so hard for justice to come face to face with hope at the very time you lose all hope. That's what the news of the extracts trial was for me. It was a very strange feeling, heartbreaking and bittersweet. My new hope was that Cadence passed peacefully, that she would experience a freedom unimaginable to our mortal selves. I was overwhelmed, but I knew right before she passed that I would still be pushing for change, even after she took her last breath. I am still looking for answers and looking for things that might have made her life better. Funny, isn't it? You never stop being a parent if you really feel the calling to love a child in that capacity. I would like to see if you do make changes to Health Canada and or on the issue of cannabis as medicine, that your government will collaborate with the most fragile and health compromised. Perhaps a panel of expert voices and opinions from patients, from parents, caregivers, nurses, alternative care specialists, and other frontline on-the-ground Canadians would be most beneficial. It is so important that all have a voice in healthcare, not just the pharmaceutical companies, bigwig doctors and lobby groups. Many aspects of healthcare in Canada can be made more efficient, sustainable, and quality focused simply by listening to people in need of care. I look out at every one of you, and at some point in your life, whether you need it now or you need it later, I'm asking that you support this cause, that you talk about it, that you not be afraid to talk to your neighbor about cannabis and how it's helping people, because it's you that pushes this movement forward. I was a spectator in this when I saw that Charlotte Figge story on TV. I was a spectator, but my husband and I, we knew we needed to find something quick because nothing was working for our daughter, and she was suffering. Whether she was going to live a long life, we didn't know how long she would live. We knew she would not outlive us. It was that bad. But we wanted her to have quality of life. And quality of life is what it's all about. This experience has taught me things about life and made me question a lot of things. A lot of things. And I think for each and every one of us to reiterate what the message was at the very beginning of this, was that everything is perspective. It is, what was it, 20% or 10% of what we experience, and 80 or 90% of how we deal with it and how we approach it. And positivity is important. And it's important to have education, to educate yourself. It's really important. I look at each and every one of you and I see people that can be inspired and people that can do something. I'm just a normal person. I'm not anybody special. But I have a great love for other people. And I listened to each and every one of you, and it touched me. I'm a very emotional person now because my heart bleeds for people that suffer. We don't have to. Thank you.
Do we have any questions that came in online? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Kim. I'm going to end this evening. We wanted a question and answer period, but it is 9 o'clock, so I'm going to read this to you. It's called The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect, and more often wear a smile, remembering that little special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? And so we thank Cadence and her short 10 years that her memory lives on. You have a voice. We have not been told the truth about a lot of things. I'd like to thank Tom Lyman, my husband of 31 years, for putting this evening together. Come on, Tom, just come up. You don't have to say anything. You just have to come in, please. Tom did the website, and he will be continually updating. Green Thinking is launched this evening, and we will be working with Jack, and we will be working with a lot of people to make the world a better place. Green is a beautiful color.
I just take a second and just say thank you, first of all, to all the people that showed up. This is wonderful. I look out here and I see all these faces, and it's so exciting, and gives us a chance to thrust forward with the cause. And I take a moment to say thank you so much to our new family up here on the front row. I just, so beautiful. Thank you very much. And to the people that supported us out there in the field, the ticket location holders and the corporate sponsors, the people that helped make this thing happen, and of course, I thank our mayor for speaking on behalf of our town. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for your time and attention. Good night.